Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me today for an incredibly exciting and historic announcement. It's always great to have our support from Director Jackson. She's here, and I think Secretary Moran may be joining us in a bit. And I'm also really glad to have Debbie Smith here. She's going to share with us her incredibly important and personal perspective on what we've accomplished here in Virginia. Today, we are here to announce that Virginia's rape kit backlog has been completely eliminated. And let me say that again, because it is really exciting news. Virginia's backlog of untested rape kits has been completely eliminated, and it's never coming back. Eliminating this backlog has been a long time in coming. It's taken a lot of work, but eliminating this backlog means that a wrong has been righted, that justice is closer for more survivors, and that Virginia is a safer place. And we believe that Virginia is only the 7th state in the country to eliminate its backlog. Eliminating this backlog closes one chapter in our Commonwealth's approach to preventing and investigating sexual violence, and allows us to continue to write a new one in which these crimes are taken seriously every time. Survivors are treated with respect and compassion, and the Commonwealth is a partner in the pursuit of justice and healing. For decades, untested PERC kits have been sitting on the shelves in police storage facilities around the Commonwealth just collecting dust. PERC kits are physical evidence recovery kits. They are used to collect DNA and other physical evidence as part of an investigation into sexual assault. When I first got into office, more than 6 years ago, I learned that the backlog had grown to about 3,000 untested PERC kits. That number was just shocking to me, and it was unacceptable. One untested rape kit is one too many. Each of these kits represented a survivor's trauma, and each of them could have held key evidence in bringing a perpetrator to justice, but they had been pushed to the side and never dealt with. And for many survivors, the fact that their kit was never tested denied them a sense of security and justice that is critical for healing from such a traumatic experience. So when we found out about these kits, we went to work, and we've been working every day since to eliminate this backlog. My team and I led a complex and multidisciplinary effort to test these kits, to make sure each gets a fresh look and bring perpetrators to justice. As a result of our project, 2,665 kits were tested. 851 new DNA profiles have been uploaded into the National DNA Database. 354 hits have been sent to law enforcement agencies for further investigation. Charges are pending against a Spotsylvania man as a result of our project. And as localities around Virginia continue to reopen and investigate cases in light of this new evidence, we anticipate more charges may be filed. The work my team and I have done to address Virginia's rape kit backlog is just one part of our larger effort to transform the way Virginia responds to sexual violence and move past a time when these cases were too often ignored or swept under the rug. We helped pass a law in 2016 to mandate the immediate testing of kits and giving survivors a right to know the results, which will keep Virginia from ever having a backlog like this again. And as part of our project, the Department of Forensic Science has developed Virginia's first statewide PERC tracking system that can be used by DFS, law enforcement, and hospitals, as well as survivors, who can now check the location and status of their kits at any time. This is an unprecedented level of transparency and accountability that ensures timely testing and empowers survivors. So when I say the backlog is gone and never coming back, I mean it. We have made sure of that. This project has been a true catalyst for real, significant changes in the way Virginia approaches, investigates, and prosecutes sexual violence, and the way that survivors of these heinous crimes are treated when they choose to come forward and share their experiences. We've invested in the latest survivor-centered and trauma-informed training for law enforcement and prosecutors, especially for those working cold cases, so that we can build the strongest cases possible while minimizing re-victimization. It is crucial that we give survivors the support they need to help them reclaim their power and control that their attackers tried to steal from them. As your Attorney General, I remain committed to doing all I can to help survivors on a journey to healing and recovery. The perks that made up Virginia's backlog were not just perks, kits sitting on a shelf. Behind every one is a story and a person who has had their life permanently changed. And we must treat each of them with the respect and compassion that they so deserve. We owe it to survivors to do the best we can, and I promise to always be a loyal ally to all Virginians in this fight. Virginia's rape kit backlog is finally gone, and it's never coming back. And I want to thank our partners at the Department of Forensic Science, Secretary Moran, the Virginia Action Alliance, and other members of the SACI Steering Committee for all of their help and support on this important project, as well as the law enforcement partners who submitted kits and our legislative partners who carried and supported our legislation. I also want to thank the folks on my team, both past and present, who have worked tirelessly to make our goal of eliminating the backlog a reality. Kelly Carpenter, Terry Dewsbury, Shannon Freeman, Lisa Furr, Chrissy Smith, and Mary Vale Ware. I want to thank you all for your hard work and your dedication. And now I would like to introduce Director Linda Jackson, the Director of Virginia's Department of Forensic Science. She and her team have been tremendous partners in not just developing the tracking system, but in the whole project. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, General Herring. We at DFS have appreciated our partnership with your office. Receiving these grant funds to outsource the testing of the previously unsubmitted perks has allowed for DFS to work on these older perks without impacting the analysis of current cases, which is very important. In addition, we appreciate the staff at the Attorney General's office for their leadership in the overall grant administration and reporting, as well as coordinating with the law enforcement agencies across the Commonwealth to submit the perks to Bodie Technology, our outsourcing laboratory in Northern Virginia. For nearly 5 years, our dedicated scientists have worked over 2,800 hours of overtime to perform the data reviews of the private laboratory results and upload the eligible DNA profiles into CODIS for searching. I want to thank all 35 DFS scientists who have worked on these projects from all 4 of our laboratories. In particular, I'd like to recognize Forensic Biology Group Supervisor Teresa Francis for coordinating all of the testing relating efforts at DFS. Our agency's commitment reflects the importance of this project and our desire to assist in developing investigative leads and identifying perpetrators of these horrific crimes. In addition, DFS is very proud to play a critical role in supporting the criminal justice system moving forward by developing and managing the perk tracking system, which provides valuable information to all users, including law enforcement agencies, hospitals, and survivors. The mandatory use of the perk tracking system will enable us to work with law enforcement and hospitals to ensure that kits are appropriately submitted to DFS for testing within 60 days of receipt. Our policy board, the Forensic Science Board, will be reporting statistics from the perk tracking system to policymakers each November so that they will have the information needed to evaluate the effectiveness of perk laws in Virginia moving forward. Lastly, I would like to thank DFS Chief Deputy Katja Herndon, who has served on both the Danny and the Saki steering committees and worked tirelessly with our software developer, ThinkIT, to ensure that the PERC tracking system is both user-friendly and collects appropriate information. We are looking forward to our continued collaboration with the Attorney General's Office on PERC and other related projects in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Jackson, for your comments, but more importantly, for your leadership on this important project. And now I would like to ask Debbie Smith to come forward. Debbie is a mother of 2 grown children with 7 grandchildren and has been married to her husband, Rob, for over 48 years. She was a stay-at-home mom in 1989 when a masked intruder entered her home, abducted, robbed, and repeatedly raped her in the woods behind her home in Williamsburg, Virginia. For 6.5 years, this crime went unsolved until DNA made a cold hit on a repeat offender who was serving time for other crimes. Since the end of a lengthy and drawn-out trial, Debbie has become a crusader, intent on helping other victims and trying to prevent others from becoming victims. Federal law with Debbie's name attached, the Debbie Smith Act, a 5-year bill, has now been passed 4 times, providing DNA funding across the country. Debbie speaks at conferences all over the U.S. and the world in efforts to help others. She is the founder and CEO of HEART, Inc., a nonprofit foundation established to aid victims of sexual assault. Debbie, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your experience, and thank you also for your advocacy.
Wow, what an absolute privilege it is to be included in the celebration of such a milestone in conquering our sexual assault rape kit backlog. And then to have the promise, you got it, you all heard him say it wasn't coming back. When I first started in this type of work, it was because I was taken into, after my trial was over, I was taken to a room and showed a storage area where from floor to ceiling there were nothing but kits, and there were boxes and bags and baskets. And I was told that all of them were nothing but sexual assault rape kits, that there was no money to test them, and that we didn't have the people to test them. So now to go from seeing that in a room, but that is what got me started in my advocacy, because I knew what the testing of my kit gave me. It gave me freedom. For the first time after my kit was, the cold hit was found because of my kit being tested, I took a walk in my own neighborhood. I was able to walk around freely without feeling like maybe he was watching me. The fear was gone. I was suicidal, constantly worrying that he was following me. So I know what it means, and it broke my heart as I looked in that room and I saw those kids. And I knew that each one of those women were feeling some of the same feelings that I had felt before my assailant was identified. But this is a privilege. There's not a lot that I can add to what has been said today, except for I would like to offer my personal thanks to the Attorney General Herring and to the Department of Forensic Sciences for their resolute efforts in attacking this problem. Thank you for taking a bold stand by admitting that we had a hidden shame of backlog rape kits, and for not turning your backs on victims who did exactly what they were asked to do when they submitted to that forensic exam. I used to say that rape was the whispered crime, an under-the-table conversation, because nobody was talking about it. And now here we are today having a press conference all about sexual assault. We certainly have come a long way. Each of those kits represents a sexual assault victim who endured that 4 to 6 hour stressful exam as well as continued trauma and embarrassment for something that they are not in any way responsible. They put their trust in our system, believing that they were not only helping to solve their case, but lending valuable information in solving other cases and possibly preventing many more. Thank you for stepping up and giving victims a voice. Thank you for giving them hope and for helping them to know that they do have a significance and that those hours were not in vain. Some would say that it is too expensive and not a good use of time to test these kits. But by testing these kits, we now understand the importance of the evidence contained within them. Therefore, it is imperative that we have trained forensic nurses in our hospitals. The General Assembly, thank goodness I heard, increased the budget to better reimburse healthcare providers for collecting rape kits. But of course, because of COVID, that money was not released. My prayer and my hope is that they will reconsider, because these trained professionals are as crucial in the care and treatment of a victim of sexual assault as a cardiologist is to a heart patient. Virginia has worked so hard to correct a wrong, that wrong of leaving those kits on shelves behind closed doors. But a great investment not only corrects the wrong of the past, but also works in the present for a better future. By testing all of these kits, Virginia has done just that. These kits can contain powerful DNA evidence that can identify unknown perpetrators, link unsolved cases, prevent rapists from claiming future victims, and it can even exonerate the innocent. Now that is truly something that is working on the past, taking care of our present and preparing for the future. Now that is a great investment of money. That, to me, is our justice system at its very best. As I have traveled this country in an effort to bring attention to the devastation that this crime has on its victims, I can tell you that I have stood after a presentation and met with countless victims with tears in their eyes who still wait for their voice to be heard. And my heart just breaks. But thanks to this initiative, the citizens of Virginia have a greater hope for justice. So it is from the very bottom of my heart that I thank you both and everyone that was involved for this accomplishment. Thank you.
Debbie, thank you so much for sharing your personal perspective on what this accomplishment means for you personally, as well as all Virginians, and for your tireless advocacy to help victims. If anyone has questions, we'll be happy to take them. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. We now have a state law that requires the testing to be done, I think, within 60 days?
Kits have to be submitted, except for in very limited exceptions. Excuse me. I was told to move. Kits have to be submitted under the state law once they're in the receipt of law enforcement within 60 days to the Department of Forensic Science. Currently, our turnaround time for doing those cases is about 129 days on average once they are submitted to the laboratory. But every kit that is submitted to the laboratory is tested. So that is roughly 29 days after submission? Correct. That is the current average.
And just to elaborate a little bit more, I've seen a demonstration of the tracking system. that is an incredibly powerful tool that allows not just law enforcement and medical professionals to track where the case is or where the kit is at any moment, but also survivors, so that they know exactly what the status of the kit is, where it is, and that it is being tested. Yeah. Well, I started in January of 2014, and I learned that there were nearly 3,000 untested PERT kits, and that was unacceptable. That is shocking. So in 2015, we started to go to work to try to identify every single kit in the state and find a way to make sure that everyone was tested. First of all, to our knowledge, I think only 6 other states have so far been able to eliminate their backlog. Virginia would become the 7th. This was a mammoth undertaking to identify the location of every untested kit in every department and agency in the state, and to develop a plan for getting each one tested. And y'all have to remember that we were moving as quickly as we could, while at the same time keeping in mind that each kit could contain key evidence in a criminal case and had to be tracked and handled properly. And now we've been able to accomplish that, which is a tremendous result for all Virginians, but especially survivors. Eliminating the backlog of untested rape kits is one part of a larger transformation in how Virginia is responding and investigating and prosecuting cases of sexual violence. Too often, these cases were not given the seriousness that they deserved. Some of them were swept under the rug, and those days are over. And by survivor-centered, I mean that the well-being of the survivor is at the center of everything that we do. And by trauma-informed, I mean that there is an understanding of just how traumatic sexual assault and sexual violence is, and that trauma has an impact that is long-lasting. And so by developing survivor-centered, trauma-informed responses and best practices, we can not only make sure that we build stronger cases and get stronger evidence, but we can also help provide the physical and emotional support and mental support that survivors need on their path of healing and recovery. Well, I would say to anyone in other states, be working as fast as you can, while at the same time being mindful that these can contain criminal evidence, so you've got to be very careful and thoughtful in your approach. But I think more importantly, for Virginians, they need to know that they will be treated with the dignity and respect and compassion that they deserve. I have spoken with so many survivors. You heard Debbie speak about what that means. I've spoken with survivors who, in their case, their perpetrator was identified, they pursued it, the person was brought to justice and put in prison. But when they heard that we were going to eliminate the backlog of untested kits, it meant so much to them, because then they knew that their Commonwealth understood how serious an offense that was, and that we would stand with them. And part of that is also giving the assurance to other Virginians that if they are ever the victim of sexual violence, that they'll be treated with compassion and respect. And I heard of a case in Norfolk just a few weeks ago where someone heard that we were eliminating the backlog of untested kits, and that prompted that person to step forward. So, this is part of an overall transformation of how Virginia is responding to sexual violence and making sure that the survivor is at the center of it and the survivor's well-being is at the center of it. We can try to get that number for you. There were 354 hits, and so that information, getting the kits tested and the data input into the database, and any hits, that information communicated back to the department where the kit originated, is really the first step. It's an important and critical step. But now it's up to the local departments to take that information, to re-examine the cases, and take whatever steps that they deem appropriate in light of the new evidence. That's the entire project that has been about a 5-year project. Anything else? Okay. Why don't we take, nope? Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you all so much for being here and joining us for this really important and historic announcement.